Albert Einstein, Chapter 10, Danger. The shadow of war, however, was not far off. Adolf Hitler, young, power-hungry, had become leader of the National Socialists and then Chancellor of Germany. And in an incredibly short time, Hitler the Führer had all Germany under his thumb. According to the philosopher Hegel, all nature operates on the theory of the survival of the fittest. Weak things die or are killed by the strong. Only those most fit for life survive, and in this way, the species improves itself. Hegel believed that the same could be done with man. The strongest, handsomest, and most intelligent should continue the race. This Übermensch or Superman, Hegel said, was the Aryan, the tall, blond, blue-eyed Germanic type. When Hitler came to power, he put Hegelian philosophy into effect. The result was a terrible persecution of all non-Aryans, and the first to fall victim to this were all the Jews. Dr. Albert Dr. Albert Einstein discovered a tremendously important universal truth held everywhere from the West to the furthermost part of the Orient as a citizen of the world was a Jew. He was also liberal and apparently completely without fear, for he said in an interview, "Let every man be respected as an individual and no man idolized." This was hardly the kind of remark likely to endear a speaker to the conceited, power-hungry young Hitler. It became obvious that Einstein must be got rid of. It was one late afternoon in midsummer that Elsa saw the man with the pistol. She had been pulling dandelions from the lawn. Albert, she knew, was in the little room she had built onto the house to serve him as a study. A shadow fell across the lawn, and she looked up just in time to see a man, crouching as he ran, turn the corner of the house toward Albert's study. As he turned, the sunlight glinted for a moment on the long blue steel barrel of a German Luger pistol. Instantly, in an activity, she knew that this man meant to kill her husband. Without a second's hesitation, she was up from her knees and running, clutching the trowel as if it were a dagger. She did not follow the man. She ran to the opposite side of the house, for she knew that way lay her only hope of reaching the study before the assassin could make it. Right in the corner, she was just in time to see the man as he peered into the window of Albert's study. He started to raise the pistol. Elsa screamed and threw the trowel. It missed the man's head but crashed into the study window, and had the effect of startling the man and startling Albert. Elsa rushed toward the man and jumped at him. Before he had time to recover from his surprise, Albert ran out through the broken French windows and grabbed the pistol out of the man's hand. Later, when the police arrived, he broke down and confessed that he was trying to kill Albert because there was a prize of $500,000 being offered to anyone who would assassinate the well-honored scientist. After the police had taken the man away, Elsa felt weak in her knees and had to sit down. Her husband looked at her with great affection. He knew her well and was sure that if he thanked her for saving his life or praised her for her bravery, she would probably burst into tears. Instead, he tried to treat the whole affair lightly and to make a joke of it. "Look at this head of mine," he exclaimed, pointing at his wind-blown gray hair. "Just look at it, Elsa. Think of it. There's a price of $5,000 on it just as it is, and you thought I ought to get a haircut?" The tough little scientist had never been one to be much affected by threats. They acted upon him as a challenge. He was tempted to stay on at their delightful house at Capuf, but when a second attempt was made on his life, this time blocked by the gardener, he decided it was not fair to endanger not only his own life, but those of his loved ones because of his own stubborn pride. He accepted temporary sanctuary in Belgium. There he began planning for a world lecture tour. Reluctantly, he decided to resign from the Academy of Science and from the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute. He felt that it might be best for his friends and colleagues, many of whom were not Jewish, if he were to offer them an easy and graceful way of breaking their connection with him. To his surprise, his resignation was accepted quite without regret, and he was accused of disloyalty and even of communism. In fact, it was at this time that the words Bolshevism and communism were first used in connection with his name. He had read with mixed feelings the report of a National Women's Club in the United States which declared him definitely communistic in his teachings. It is possibly this as much as any other single thing that influenced him to accept 3 terms of teaching at the California Institute of Technology at Pasadena. This gave him a welcome opportunity to renew acquaintance with old friends of his, such as Professor Albert Michelson, whose experiments in the measurement of the speed of light had stimulated young Albert's imagination, and the famous physicist Millikan, who had also been an inspiration to the young struggling scientist in a lonely world of new ideas. Another old friend was Dr. Abraham Flexner, well known in America as a daring and liberal educator. He urged Albert to join the teaching staff of the newly founded Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton, New Jersey. This sounded like the sort of job he looked forward to all his life. He allowed Ursula to settle the matter of salary, so she won't complain that I don't allow her enough for household expenses. He never did ask what the final figure was. They moved into a lovely house with a great deep garden on Mercer Street in Princeton. The academy was not a part of the university campus, but one could reach it by walking between the campus buildings if one wished. Here, the Einsteins settled down in complete happiness. War and hatred might fill the world, but here, there was a little island of peace. Margot and Elsie joined the Einsteins, as did Albert's sister Mija, his royal secretary Helen Dukas, and their newly acquired terrier Chico. He often wondered how the rumor that he was a communist sympathizer had begun, and was curious enough to make a point of asking one of the members of the National Women's Club when he met her at a faculty function. Several years after his family had become accepted as a beloved part of the Princeton scene. In a lecture you made at a liberal arts college in 1933, the lady explained, you said that you had come to the conclusion that there was no absolute truth in mathematics, and as this was the most precise of all sciences, you did not see how there could be such a thing as an absolute truth in philosophy, or politics, or in religion. I recall saying something of the sort, Einstein admitted. But please continue, for I must confess that I failed to see. The lady looked at him reprovingly. You then went on to say that you could understand how, to the underprivileged rural peasant of Russia, the system of free enterprise might prove less satisfactory than simply being issued orders by paternalistic government. In short, a communism might mean one thing to a Russian and quite another to an already freed individual in a free society like the United States. Madam, Albert Einstein asked with amused irony, do you still consider that to be a communist statement? Well, let me put your mind at rest, madam, Albert continued with eyes twinkling. My stepdaughter Margaret, my secretary Miss Dugas, and I have had the honor to be accepted as citizens of the United States. I don't want you to lose sleep worrying lest we plan some violent act against the government. I still think everything, including a point of view, is related and relative. But he leaned closer to the startled lady, who whispered melodramatically, from our viewpoint here at Princeton, we like it here. During those early years at Princeton, Albert Einstein found himself in a strange position. His theory of relativity was generally accepted as being true, yet everyone agreed that no one could understand what it was. On the floor of Congress in Washington, speakers talked at length about the fact that only 12 men in the world today may understand what the Einstein theory is all about. Albert claimed that the basic principles involved could be understood by any earnest, conscientious second-year physics student. He encouraged the young men who studied with him, and even others who were not in his classes, to come to him for explanation of his theory, or any other problem they might be having difficulty with in the field of mathematics or physics. For that matter, if you have a problem, come to me with it, he said over and over again. You will never disturb me, since I can interrupt my own work at any moment. It didn't take long for the word to get around the Princeton campus. Old Albert meant what he said. He was never too busy to help a fellow with his school or his homework, even with the guy even if the guy wasn't even in his class. More than that, the little woolly-haired scientist with the flapping tan cardigan sweater or the button-up leather windbreaker, depending on the season of the year, would never be too busy to listen to problems that had nothing whatever to do with math or physics, but were concerned with how to get home for the weekend without any money for train fare, or how to get a date in Philadelphia. The undergrads at Princeton bet each other that the professor would undertake anything. But too many students lost their bets, and after a while, no one would bet against Albert Einstein. During these early years at Princeton, Albert seemed to be driven by two great forces. He wanted to have as many people as possible understand his theory, or relativity, and he wanted to discourage everyone from thinking about the smashing of the atom and the release of vast forces which seemed to be beyond control. The world isn't ready for it yet, he used to say every time some advanced student or inventor approached him with the idea that he should do more research and experimentation on nuclear fission. There's plenty of time for that, he say, and change the subject. Quite the opposite was his attitude about relativity, which, in a way, was directly responsible for the whole idea that there was energy in matter waiting to be released. No one had to ask twice for an explanation of the theory of relativity. His many explanations varied with the audience he was addressing. If he were talking to a group of science students, he might explain, in technical terms, the fact that everything in the universe, every planet, the sun, the moon, earth, was constantly in motion, and that therefore the position of each planet was changed from moment to moment in relation to the others, and that hence one could obtain a relative finding of their positions, but not a definite fixed point on the map, at which any one planet could always be found. Or he might draw a diagram on the blackboard explaining that it represented an airplane in flight. Imagine that where the bomb bay is usually placed, we have inserted a 100-foot piece of transparent pipe extending downward from the floor of the plane. Now suppose there's a man seated at the opening of this pipe in the plane. He takes a black marble and drops it into the pipe. He peers down the pipe and watches the marble fall through. To this man it seems that the marble falls straight down in an absolutely particular course, confined as it is by the circular walls of the pipe. Plain so far? Everyone in the class nods. It is certainly understandable up to this point. Actually, the professor continues with a slight smile. Any observer on the ground will call the man in the plane a liar. The plane is moving from your right to your left, so that to the ground observer it seems as if the marble falls in a slanting trajectory. Which observer sees the truth? The answer, of course, is both. Sometimes when he was addressing a group of college freshmen who had no real hope of ever understanding the Einstein theory of relativity, and frankly didn't allow it to bother them too much, Albert would resort to a quick joke to catch their interest. Why are you sitting with a pretty girl on your lap? An hour seems like a minute. But if you put your finger on a hot stove, a minute seems like an hour. That is relativity. But best of all, Albert Einstein loved to discuss his theory with those who were not scientists, or even would be scientists, but were just nice everyday people. He enjoyed helping friends and visitors understand the relationship of his mathematical theory to everyday living, and in order to do so, he would often tell in his own words a story by the famous French author Anatole France. He told them the story of the good man who went everywhere in search of the truth. Nothing would satisfy him but the absolute truth about everything. Life, death, good, evil, everything. Finally, an angel took pity on this man, who in all his searching had never felt certain that what he saw and what he read was really true. The angel took this man to a secret chamber far below the surface of the earth, and there he showed him a strange contraption. It was huge, a tremendous wheel, bigger than any wheel the man had ever seen before. Between the spokes of the wheel, and clinging to them with both hands, stood men and women of every race and every color that the man had ever heard of. As he and his guardian angel approached the wheel, all these people, every last one of them, began shouting and crying aloud, and his own language. Of course, the man couldn't understand all of them, but those whose languages he could understand were all saying, I and I alone speak the truth. My neighbor here is lying. I speak the truth. The man turned in great uncertainty to the angel. But if one of them is speaking the truth, all the rest must be wrong, he exclaimed. How can that be? And if it be so, then which one is speaking the truth? The angel smiled. None of those speaks the truth, the angel announced. The man was really frightened now. You mean, he asked, his voice trembling, that there is no truth? Who knows, the angel answered, if one has faith, listen. With that he caught the rim of the great wheel in both his hands and gave it a whirl with all his strength. It began to turn, slowly at first, then faster and faster, and as it moved, from the mouth of every man and woman clutching the spokes came the cry of, I speak truth. My neighbor lies, don't listen to him. I speak the truth. Then as the wheel turned faster and faster, the man noticed that all the faces between the spokes seemed to blend into one great blur in which no one face was distinguishable, and the noise grew louder and louder, and the word truth seemed clearer, and suddenly a white light seemed to come from all the faces as they flashed past, and it filled the room, and the sound that came from the wheel was the sound of truth. The man turned to the angel and cried out in gratitude. Oh, thank you. Thank you for letting me see and hear. There is a truth. I know it now. There is an absolute truth. If you believe there is, the angel answered, smiling. But isn't that the truth? The man cried out, for he was frightened again. It has the ring of truth. It may well be, the angel answered. At least it is the closest to it we have been allowed to come so far. That was one of Albert Einstein's favorite ways of explaining his theory of relativity as it pertained to philosophy and the world of ideas. The only way anyone can approach the truth is if everyone seeks it and if everyone cries out when he thinks he has found it. Then each time the wheel is turned, we will get a little closer to the truth, if there was such a thing. Dr. Einstein had not been at Princeton very long before he realized that he had abandoned another idea that he had been loyal to for a very long time, the idea of non-resistance and pacifism. Since the arrival of the fascist danger, I do not believe in passive pacifism for the present. As long as fascism rules in Europe, there will be no peace. He had every reason to believe that at that time fascism was very far from being defeated in Europe. It was a threat, a growing menace to his race and to every idea of relative philosophy to which he had devoted most of his life. In Berlin at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute, there were several of his former students and colleagues who had been working for years on the development of energy from matter. They had discovered that the mineral known as uranium was most likely to produce such energy. Two former students in particular were far ahead of the field in their experiments. They were Otto Hahn and Lise Meitner. Dr. Einstein had always regarded Miss Meitner as even a greater physicist than Madame Curie. Hahn and Lise Meitner were the first to discover that the uranium atom can be broken down or smashed, thus releasing energy. It was Miss Meitner alone who discovered that a set of chain reactions could be set up, a series of explosions as each unit of energy was released, with each explosion many times bigger than the one before it. Through loyal friends, Lise Meitner learned that Hitler's Gestapo was on the point of seizing her and sending her to one of the many horrible concentration camps. Ironically, they ignored the fact that she was a great scientist, on the very verge of discovering a great new force, a force that might have won the war for Germany. They didn't know of her experiments and research. They only knew that she was Jewish. Hahn and other friends and co-workers managed to smuggle Lise Meitner out of Germany with all her notes and notebooks, but very little in the way of clothes or money. Once safely in Denmark, the courageous woman scientist sought out Dr. Niels Bohr, director of the Copenhagen Institute of Theoretical Physics. Dr. Bohr became intensely excited by Lizzie Meitner's note, but Dr. Rutherford in England. He had studied the atom in Dr. Einstein's formula, E equal mc2 as applied to it. He knew that Enrico Fermi, an Italian refugee who had fled to America, had followed up some of Leslie Meitner's experience on chain reactions. Soon Bohr smuggled Leslie Meitner's notes across the ocean to Fermi. Leslie Meitner's findings indicated that as much energy could be released by a pound of uranium as by the burning of many thousands of tons of coal. Scientists have become convinced that it would be possible to produce uranium bombs with millions of times the destructive power of previously known explosives. Fermi was working at Columbia University with a physicist named Zitlan, a Hungarian Jewish referee from the University of Berlin. They realized that atomic bombs could be made, but they knew it would take months to set up the necessary laboratories and possibly longer to train the necessary scientists and workers. They hesitated to put the matter before the Army or State Department. The whole idea of the atom bomb was so vast that they thought the project might be disregarded. They were afraid that they would be considered only as a couple of crackpot professors. The President of the United States himself seemed to be the only answer. Frankly, Delano Roosevelt had shown time and again that he had a great deal of respect for college professors. Zeeland and Fermi decided to ask Dr. Einstein to either write or see the President. They realized the need for secrecy, and instead of writing directly to Einstein, they wrote to Eugene Wigner, a Zeke science physicist who was also on the faculty at Princeton. On an August morning in 1939, they boarded a train headed for Princeton and an interview with the discoverer of the formula, which had led to the eventual production someday of an atom bomb. Hours later, they sat in the charming garden and back of Albert Einstein's home and told him about Elsie Meitner and about her work in splitting the atom. So you can see, Fermi concluded that it's necessary for us to get in touch with President Roosevelt. Will you write to him or seek an interview? Albert Einstein hesitated. He looked out over his pleasant garden and allowed his thoughts to wander, while the two impatient young physicists watched him anxiously. He was not looking at the garden. He was thinking of his school days and of what he and his family had suffered under German militarism. He saw himself and Friedrich Adler as young men discussing with deadly earnestness the great need for pacifism. Then he recalled the night in the patent office in Bern, where his formula E plus MC2 had suddenly emerged from the many figure covered sheets of paper on the desk before him. At that moment, and many times since, but especially when Elise Meitner became his student, he had realized perhaps subconsciously that someday he would have to decide whether he wanted to assume responsibility for the creation of the most terrible weapon of destruction ever conceived. Fermi's Italian temperament could stand the strain no longer. He leaned forward in the wicker garden chair so that it creaked and squeaked complainingly. Will you write the president? He asked. Will it do any good? The professor asked simply. We have never met. He doesn't know me. They smiled in relief. Everyone, including the president, knows and admires you. But still, Albert Einstein hesitated. He had come, he knew, to the real crossroads of his life. He had tried to avoid this decision, but he had failed. Now he asked one more question that he thought, might help him to decide. What became of Otto Hahn? He asked. The two young men were taken by surprise. Why? Is he still at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute? As far as we know, he Working with our elites, he might have found out everything. Have there been any large shipments of uranium to Germany recently? Yes, we were going to tell you. There, Albert Einstein pushed himself up from the wide wicker chair. There was wariness in his manner, but no more hesitation. I will write the letter, he said, and started off in the direction of his study. August 2nd, 1939. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, White House, Washington, D.C. Sir, some recent work by E. Furman and L. Szilard has been communicated to me, and manuscript leads me to expect that the element uranium may be turned into a new and important source of energy in the immediate future. Certain aspects of the situation which has arisen seem to call for watchfulness and, if necessary, quick action on the part of the administration. I believe, therefore, that it is my duty to bring to your attention the following facts and recommendations. In the course of the last 4 months, it has been made probable through the work of Jollat in France, as well as Fermat in Switzerland and America, that it may become possible to set up a nuclear chain reaction in a large mass of uranium, by which vast amounts of power and large quantities of new radium-like elements would be generated. Now it appears more almost certain that this could be achieved in the immediate future. This new phenomenon would also lead to the construction of bombs, and it is conceivable, though much less certain, that extremely powerful bombs of a newly type may thus be constructed. A single bomb of this type carried by boat and exploded in a port may very well destroy the whole port together with some of the surrounding territory. However, such bombs might very well prove to be too heavy for transportation by air. I understand that Germany has actually stopped the sale of uranium over the Czechoslovakian mines which she has taken over. That she should have taken such early action might be understood, on the ground that the son of the German Under-Secretary of State, von Weizsäcker, is attached to the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Berlin, where some of the American work on uranium is now being repeated. Yours very truly, Albert Einstein.